Greetings! This is our first lesson using MIT App Inventor 2 to create an app. In this lesson, we will create a simple app called the Question Answer app. It will introduce the App Inventor components, labels, buttons, and text-to-speech. If you have not already watched the earlier videos, preparations to use MIT App Inventor and getting started with MIT App Inventor, I encourage you to go back and watch those videos before continuing with this lesson. We will introduce using the Designer Workspace. We will also introduce using the Blocks Workspace for programming and introduce the programming concepts of event handlers, procedure calls, and text strings. We will adjust the properties of the speech synthesizer to create different voices. Some of them may be a little goofy. There will be an exercise developing the Question Answer app. We'll finalize the app so that it has a professional look and feel. And then finally, we'll discuss how to package the app in a way that you can load it onto your own Android phone or device, or you can share it with others through the Google Play Store or other sources. To begin, let me explain the rationale behind the Question Answer app. Research has shown that one of the most effective ways for learning new material is what is called self-testing. With self-testing, you generate questions or other tests for yourself as you are attempting to learn the material. The Question Answer app is a tool for self-testing in that you will generate a series of questions to study, and you can study these yourself, or you can share the app with friends and help each other to learn the new material. At this point, I have logged into MIT App Inventor 2, and I have started a new project called the QA app. I'm in the Designer Workspace. Let me first explain the sections of the Designer Workspace. On the far left, you have Palette, and under Palette are a number of different components that you can add to your app. In the center is the viewer, and here you get a display that kind of shows what your app is going to look like on the phone or device, although you will quickly learn that what shows up in the viewer is not exactly what you're going to see on the phone or device. Then to the right, you will see the components list, which gives you a list of each of the components that you've added to your app. Below that is the media, which will give you a list of various media such as images and sound files that you have uploaded and are available to be used with your app. And then to the far right is the properties. And the way this works is whichever component is highlighted in the components list, you will see the properties for that component displayed. So now screen 1 is highlighted, so we're looking at the properties for screen 1 in the properties panel. First, we want to put some text on our screen, and this text will be our first question. Now to do that, we'll go to the palette, and under User Interface, we'll see a component called a label. Let's click on that and pull it over onto our viewer. As soon as you do that, you should see the label show up both on the viewer and on your Android phone or device. Now, I'm going to offer my first helpful hint. Whenever you add a component to your app, the very first thing you should do is to rename that component. So, in our components list, we see when we brought the label over, now we have label 1 in our components list. We want to change that name so that it is something more meaningful. Now, this will become very important when you create more complicated apps and you may have 10, 15, or 20 components in your app, and you need to be able to tell those different components apart. So to rename this component, what we'll do is we'll go down to where it says rename, click on rename, and I'm going to name mine Q1 label. And I say OK. And when I say OK, at this point now, my label has been renamed. Let me offer my second helpful hint of this lesson, and that is when we're developing apps, we need to assume that the person using the app is not in the best of conditions in terms of being able to view the visual display. Imagine you're outside on a sunny day. When you add the label to the app, it gives you text that is small and very faint. To make it more easily readable, we want to make the text larger and we want to make it more distinct. So what we're going to do is, first of all, make sure our label is highlighted under Components so that we're looking at the properties for our label. Now, on the right-hand side under the properties, we'll go down, we'll click Font Bold, and when you do that, you should see the font change both on the viewer and on the phone or device. And then under Font Size, we're going to change that to 20. Now that we have a nice readable label, let's change our text so that it is our first question. I'm a neuroscientist, so I am going to make mine about brain science. What I will do is make sure my label is highlighted under Components, so I'm looking at its properties in the Properties panel. Toward the bottom, I see a field for entering text. If you're on a small display, you may have to scroll down to see this. I'm going to change this text to, what is a neuron, and hit return. When I do that, I now see that text both on the viewer and on my phone or device. The next component we will add is the button. Under Palette, under User Interface, you'll see the first component listed is Button. Click on that, drag it onto your screen, and the first thing we want to do with that component is to rename it. So I will rename my button Q1 Button. You'll see the label on the button now reads Text for Button 1. Let's change that text. Make sure Button is highlighted under Components so we see its properties. Toward the bottom, you see Text. I will change that text to read Answer. Hit Enter, and now my button reads Answer. Finally, we want to add our text-to-speech component. One of the nice things about Android is that Android devices come pre-installed with a number of apps such as text-to-speech, camera, sensors, that you can use as you're creating apps within App Inventor. The text-to-speech is essentially a speech synthesizer or speech generator, and to get to that component, we again go to Palette, except now go toward the bottom where you see the button that reads Media. That brings up a list of media components that you can use in your apps. We want the one that's the third to the bottom. That is text-to-speech. We drag that over, and we notice that it does not show up on the visual display but shows up below. This is because it is a hidden component or a non-visible component, which means that the user is not going to see this component on the visual display when they're using your app. We want to rename this component, so with it highlighted, we will rename it to Q1 Speak. We are now finished with the Designer workspace, and it's time to shift over to the Blocks workspace to create our program. In the top right corner, you will see the Blocks button. We click that, which will take us to our blocks workspace. And on the left, under blocks, toward the bottom, you will see each one of the components that we added. Let's click on our button, Q1 button, and this brings up a number of blocks that we can use with the button component. We want the first one in the list. It says when Q1 button dot click. This is what is known as an event handler. We click on the when button dot click event handler and we drag that onto this workspace, and now we have that block in our program. Next, we want to go to our text to speak, the Q1 speak. Click there, and we see a purple block called call Q1 speak.speak. This is referred to as a procedure call. We will click on the call.speak, drag it onto the workspace, slide it up into the slot matching the two little notches. Finally, we'll go over to the built-in blocks and look for the red or pink. I'm not sure exactly the color, but it says text. Click on text. We want the very first one in the list. It's a small block with a space in the middle and quotation marks on either side. This is referred to as a text string. We will drag the text string over onto the workspace and slide it into the slot there on the procedure call where it says message. So at this point, we have an event handler that says, when the button is clicked, call up this procedure, which is our text-to-speech component. Now, our final step is to tell it what to say. We'll click in the space with the text string, and we'll type in our answer. A specialized cell found in the brain that can conduct an electrical current. Hit return. Now it is time to test the app on the phone and see that it works. Now that you have a working app, you'll want to make it fun and entertaining. And one way you can do that is to make changes to the voice. To do that, we'll go back to the designer screen, and under components, make sure that we have our text-to-speech component highlighted. When we look at the properties, first we see country. Now, this isn't going to be helpful. This gives us a number of country codes that we would use in a language translator. What we're going to do will not do language translation, which is the subject of a lesson that will be coming up later on. However, if you go to language, this will let you adjust the accent. So DE would be a German accent, EN an American English accent, ES a Spanish accent, FR a French accent, and IT an Italian accent. Two other things you can do is pitch is the frequency of the voice. So you can give it a high pitch Mickey Mouse like voice, or you could give it a very low Terminator like voice. The values for pitch, they need to be a number less than 2. If you put in too large of a number, it will not know what to do with that number. So anything larger than 2 is not going to work here. Likewise, a negative number is not going to work here. And then speech rate will either increase the rate at which it speaks or decrease the rate at which it speaks. And once again, the limit is 2, so don't put a number that is larger than 2 or a negative number here. It is now time to create your own question answer app. Use what you've learned so far to add several additional questions. Remember, each question, the answer will need its own text-to-speech component, so you will need to add a few more text-to-speech components. And also, with your answers, you want to have a serious answer, but don't be afraid to personalize it and give it your own touch. Also, once you have your app working, be sure that you share it with your friends and let them try it and enjoy it also. Before you share your app with the world, you'll want to give it a professional look and feel. Here are a few tips for how you can do that. First of all, in the Designer Workspace, go to Screen 1 under Components, and for the properties of Screen 1, you will see App Name. Here, you give it a name that is the name that is going to show up on the Android phone or device when someone is looking for your app. I've called mine the QA app, and that's the name that's going to show up for it. Further on down, you'll see where it says icon. This is the icon that shows up on the phone or device for your app. Previously, I had downloaded a picture of a question mark, and I'm going to set that as the icon for my app. So, I click on icon, or in the space underneath icon. I now need to upload the file to MIT App Inventor. So, I click on upload. Now, I need to find the file on my own computer. There it is. I say OK, and it will take MIT App Inventor a moment to actually upload the file before it's available, and you will see a progress bar as it is doing that upload. For mine, I had already uploaded the file, so it immediately showed up. A little farther down, you will see Screen Orientation. Here, you can set the orientation as Portrait or Landscape. For this app, I'm going to set it as Portrait. If you do not set the app orientation, or at least the screen orientation, then when the user twists the phone, it will change orientation. Sometimes this is what you will want your app to do, but in other cases you will want it to keep the same orientation no matter how the user is holding the phone. Finally, near the bottom you will see where it says Title. This is the title that shows at the top of the screen when a user is using your app. I'm going to change that to QA app. And after I make that change, you'll note at the top of the screen on the viewer, it has changed the title to QA app. As it is now, once you exit out of App Inventor, your app will be saved on the App Inventor website, but it will no longer operate on your phone or device. To keep it on the phone or device, what you will need to do is to install it on the phone or device. The way you do that is you go to Build, and it gives you two options for how to do this. The first of these, App, provide QR code for .apk. This will give you a barcode, and you can scan the barcode using the MIT AI2 companion app on your phone or device, and once it scans the barcode, it will install the app. The other option, the app save.apk file to my computer. This saves a .apk file to your computer. It will save in the downloads folder on the computer. And what you can do is to then email that file to yourself or anyone else as an attachment. So the .apk file is an email attachment. When someone opens that attachment from the email, then it will install the app on their phone or device. For more lessons, or for the written notes to go with this lesson, visit the Brain Hackers website at www.brainhackers.net.